I'll make a start for you, Chair.
Yeah, sure, yeah, please.
Fantastic. So this is a meeting of the Welsh Church Act Estate Committee. I've just got an announcement to make at the start. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording will be archived for future viewing. Could I please ask all participants to mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up? I think Councillor William is joining us. Fantastic. You can raise your hand if you can be seen on screen, or you can use the raise hand function in Teams. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or to grab the attention of the chairman or the Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, they should let the chairman or Democratic officer know. If they have a webcam, then they should try turning this off, as this will help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth. So at least you'll be able to be heard or to hear or be heard. Thank you. I'll hand over to Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now got the first item of the agenda is apologies for absence. I think we're all present. Okay, thank you. Are you happy for me to sign the minutes of the held on the 18th of January 2021? Yes?
Yes.
Fine, thank you. Okay, item 3, declaration of interest. Have we got any declarations of interest? All right, the chairman has. On item number 8 and item number 12 on part 2, I'm going to withdraw from the meeting, okay, because I'm a ward councillor for the area. I'm also on the planning committee, and therefore I think I've got a personal and prejudicial interest. That's why I'm withdrawing from the meeting. Okay, what we're going to be doing just to set the scene, we're going to go through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutively, and then we're going to move to part 2s on those items, and that will stay for item 10 and 11. Okay, all right, but I will come back after 8, as you can imagine. So we're now going on to applications for financial assistance. Gemma?
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the first round of applications for financial assistance 21-22. We have set a budget for grants for 21-22 of £45,000 based on last year's outturn and our estimates for 21-22. But that budget may change slightly as the year progresses. Part of that 45,000 is a sum of £5,196 that was unallocated in 2021. And the grants are set out in Appendix A to the report. So we have 3 grants. Hopefully you can all see it's quite small. The first one is St Andrew's Church in the Vale, and these are urgent repairs that are needed to the tower, phase 1 of the works. They have applied for £5,000, and given the size of the scheme, it's proposed that the full £5,000 is awarded. However, it's proposed that that's awarded in principle, pending confirmation of the other streams of grant funding. The second application is for Derry Sant Church, and this is recommended by Cardiff Council, and this is to provide accessible and refurbished toilet facilities. And they have applied for £4,000, and again it's proposed that that full £4,000 is awarded, again in principle pending confirmation of grant funding. And then the final application is for Roos Community Library, purchase and installation of bike scooter racks, and they've applied for £1,000, but we proposed award of £750 in line with our usual approach to ask for 25% match funding. And we're proposing to award in principle pending confirmation of match funding. If I could just draw your attention to paragraph 4.2 of the report. We did have a grant award that we've carried forward from 2018. 19 for St Augustine's Church for the installation of some hot air curtains. This grant hasn't been drawn down within the time frame, so it's proposed that in line with our approach last financial year, we now unallocate that funding and write to the organisation saying that they must now reapply for that funding if it's still required. That £850 has been included in the £45,000 sum for allocation in year. Okay, I'm happy to take any questions.
Open to any member? All right, in that case, I'm happy to propose these changes. So I'm happy to support the recommendation of St Andrew's Church for 5,000. Is everyone happy with that?
Yes, second.
Yeah, good. And with Dewisant Church, are we happy to recommend a £4,000 going forward as well?
Yes, second.
Yeah, thank you. Roots Community Library for £750. I'm happy to do that as well. And also for the St Augustine's Church, are we happy to support the suggestion and that Gemma made as well about that, so they have to reapply because they're out of time?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's all right. So we're now moving on now to the land to the rear of Church Road. Okay, Lorna, are you going to do this report, or is it Jane?
I'll take it, Chairman. Thank you. Thanks very much. So the report is intended to bring to the attention of committee an ongoing issue with the repair and maintenance of this land, which has been subject to previous reports in the past, and to seek committee's views on how to move things forward to find a long-term solution for the future maintenance and management of the lane. So the lane to the rear of Church Road is owned obviously by the Trust and is shown on the appendix to the report. Residents have made regular complaints to council officers and committee in relation to the overgrown nature of the land, and there's a history of fly tipping accumulating it on the land as well. And that's been going on for a number of years. Officers have arranged for the land to be cleared of rubbish on a number of occasions over the years and undertaken some clearback of overgrowth along the lane. But the issues are continuing. Complaints concerning the state of the land and fly tip material continues to be a problem. More recently, a quotation has been received for the most recent issues of fly tipping and overgrowth. And the cost or the estimate of the cost of clearance is £3,220 at the moment, and that quotation was received in the last month. In terms of previous actions, officers have written to householders along Church Road. Oh, is that just me who's got that noise?
No, we all got it.
No. Councillor William came in over his phone, and we get an announcement when that happens. Right, and I think he's just left, so the same thing happened. Sorry.
Okay. So just in terms of previous actions, in the past, council officers have written to householders along Church Road to inquire whether they would be interested in purchasing the strips of land to the rear of their gardens. There was little or no interest at the time. It's something that committee may wish to consider again in the future. There's also been some consideration of other issues, but I think we need probably to consider a longer term future for the land, because it will be continuing to be a maintenance and repair issue for committee going forward. So the report really is just to ask members to consider how they wish to proceed with a long-term future for the maintenance and repair of this build for the land in question. Previously, we had a report from colleagues in the council's highway and engineering department, and they were looking at longer term solutions for tarmacking, for building up a wall, which we thought would be helping to prevent fly tip materials coming over the top of the wall. The problem that we've encountered recently is the wall that separates the lane to the rear of Church Road is constructed part on Bastion Close development, remains in the ownership of the original developer and third-party ownership. So that's not going to be as straightforward as initially thought. The building up the wall alone is not going to stop the issues, because there's access from Church Road, which people have come reversed cars or just emptied items straight from their vehicles or by foot onto the lane. So this is a really difficult one to resolve. I think there's approximately £12,000 been spent on maintenance of the lane over the last 10 years or so. And whilst it doesn't seem to be a great deal of money over that length of period of time, cumulatively, it's it's money that the church can ill afford to sort of keep paying out. So there's no easy answer for this one, unfortunately. So it's just throwing the issue out there for discussion, and really, just wondering what members would like to do in terms of the longer term future, whether we go back out and offer it to the original property owners, back onto the lane again, whether that's worth doing, whether there's an option to potentially put the lane on the market as a whole single lot to see if anybody wants to take it off our hands, or any other ideas that anybody else might have. So it's just opening up really for discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Lorna. Okay, you've given us a nice question to which to answer. So I'm thinking, have we got any member who wants to have a go and try to answer this, provide solution? What would you?
Yeah, can I just ask if I've not visited the lane, so I don't know the layout properly, but does the occupants of the houses have access to the lane?
James, could you answer that one? There's been some legal advice sought in respect to that very question, Councillor Crowley, and I understand that whilst there's no, James will back this up, I think, whilst there's no express rights of access, there may well be what we call prescriptive rights accrued in favour of those owners, and James will probably be able to give a little bit more detail in that respect.
Yeah, so I suppose it just depends on the nature of the question. If you mean, are they physically able to access the lane, i.e. have they got a door or a gate? Yes. I think in the main, the answer to that is yes, most of them do have. Again, I've not been on site, but I think from the pictures I've seen, I think a number of them at least have a gate or a means of accessing that back lane. And as Lorna says, there don't appear to be any formal legal rights over that lane for those properties. Right? There's not as Lorna says, a right of way or an easement for doing any one thing. However, if we were to try and prevent them from having access to the lane, what we may find is that one or a number of those properties may come forward and say, I've lived in this house for more than 20 years, and I've always used that lane to access the rear of my property to do X, Y, or Z, and there'd be a fairly strong likelihood that some prescriptive rights would have been accrued, although we wouldn't know that until such time as we did anything to sort of stop that and give rise to people needing to clarify the position. Thank you for that.
Do you want to come back on that, Bob, or are you happy with that?
Well, it's just a speculation whether there would be perhaps a joint ownership bid by the people who actually use the lane. Could that happen?
Yeah, I mean, legally, there's no reason that they couldn't almost have like an association of people or something along those lines. Again, I think the difficulty with that is getting everyone involved and making sure that you don't prevent. So if somebody, if it requires an amount of money, and it may not necessarily be in terms of purchase price, it may be in terms of ongoing maintenance. You may have people along that road who aren't in a position to contribute to that, but what they would be able to do is claim any rights that may have accrued for the benefit of their property over the course of time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next, I think, is Jeff. Jeff is next.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think in the first instance, we ought to go back to the neighbouring householders and see if there's any interest. I'm sure it's absolute long shot to get any interest, but I think we may as well do that first of all. And we did have the highway engineer's report, as Lorna said. But of course, it did mention within that the legal difficulties may arise in actually raising the height of the walls, which was one of the recommendations within the engineer's report.
Thank you very much for that, Jeff. Janice?
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to get to visualize exactly where this is. Is it at the back of what used to be the old village church, or is it at the back of the steep hill church road that goes up towards Calyxton School? Nobody's been.
Councillor Charles, if you know Victoria Park Road, where it comes around that bend, coming down towards Church Road, the lane sort of runs parallel between Church Road and Bastion Close, and it's right smack bang in the middle there.
Very steep, isn't it?
Yes.
Steep. Yeah. Know where we are now. Yes, thank you.
All right then. Has anyone else got any comments before I make my comments about it?
Yeah. I just can't understand how that strip was left behind. When it amazes me, because it's the most strangest strip. But that was years and years ago.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question which I don't know the answer to. So I already asked questions I don't know the answer to, but I'm going to be daring. And I wonder if James could help me out here, because it's probably a legal question. What would be our obligations? Okay, what would be our obligations if we decided to surrender the land? So we said we don't want any ownership of this land. Is that possible? I don't know if it is. And B, if it was possible, then it's not owned by anybody. Oh.
I've got to be fair, it's something I've never come across before. I suppose the nearest thing to it would be where land was owned by a company that was sort of dissolved, and that would go bona vacantia, so basically back to the Crown. However, I don't know whether we could avoid any potential liabilities on that basis if we're still in existence. So whilst you could potentially dispose of the benefit of the land, I'm not sure that you could dispose of the liability and the burdens that are attached with it. I suppose the only thing,
I'm just thinking a bit out loud, because I'm thinking that, say for instance, it's a little bit of a game I'm playing here. Let's say for instance we took Jeff's point, we made it as easy as possible for the residents to take over. And I know it's a bit complicated because apparently there's some leaseholders here as well. Some residents to take over this bit of land. And we basically said to them, if you don't take over this bit of land, then we may think about surrendering that piece of land or giving that piece of land to a third party. Now, the chances are, if you rightly said, and I think you're probably right, if someone lived over 20 years, they've still got access rights to this piece of land as well. But this idea of a third party acquiring this land, probably a bit not too sure. They probably wouldn't want that to happen too much. What's in it for them, if they haven't got full control of that land? I mean, I see the point. Just wondering if we can play a bit of brickmanship with the owners, trying to get them to acquire this piece of land, to be honest, because we don't want to be forking out £3,000 or £4,000 every year for this relatively small piece of land, you know? And that's why I'm thinking out loud. And the other thing I was also thinking, a lot of people have sort of said this as well, is that they didn't really know the site very well. I don't know the site well. I know we got COVID restrictions. I'm well aware of that. But it's something that I wouldn't mind us doing, even if we can only do it informally, would be a site visit there. Maybe 1 or 2 officers, not everyone turn up at the same time, just to run it through. So we have a better understanding of how the site really works. I've got democratic. Do you want to say something?
Hi, yes, sorry. I know we did discuss this at Agenda Conference, Chairman. I have put the query forward. It is under discussion. In terms of doing anything as a committee, we are going to have to follow the sort of corporate stance on it. So bear with us. We're in discussions. Obviously, we're aware members would like to start doing site visits again. It's under discussion at the moment, just to clarify that it is being thought about.
Fine. Okay, what's your views of the committee about my suggestion of possible site visit? I mean, even if it's like a few of us, not everyone.
Yeah.
Most people seem to be nodding.
Yeah, perhaps the Barry councillors, Pam and myself,
Yes.
could do it.
Yeah.
It's difficult to talk about something when you don't actually visualise the layout, isn't it?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking as well. And maybe I could visit it with maybe Lorna or James or both of you, you know, in the future, just to get a better understanding. So can we kind of defer this to a site visit? Is that okay? Jeff, what was I mean, do you think we should contact the residents as well at the same time, or should we wait for a site visit?
I think probably we could possibly do both. I don't see that one is going to affect the other.
Okay.
The only thing could be affected is notice of the residents.
If we got 2 proposals on the table, one we have a site visit, and the second one is that we contact the residents for the means for them to get in possession of the land. And while we not use the word acquiring, because that implies a purchase, again, I want to make sure that legally we can do this, James, as well, whether we can give the land almost like for free, because the liability is involved.
Yeah, I think obviously with any disposal of trust land, we'd need to have a qualified surveyor's report. But I think in these circumstances where there is no real financial benefit and an ongoing burden that we can evidence over a number of years, I'd be surprised if a qualified surveyor didn't consider that a disposal for free to a relevant group wouldn't be an appropriate manner of dealing with it. In terms of the query about sort of the surrender of the freehold title, I'll get some of the team to do a bit of digging around on that and see if there is anything on it.
Yeah, I think if we have a third proposal, then we look at the implications of surrendering any title of land in terms of the Welsh Church trustees, you know, in terms of any liabilities going forward, because I think that is an important question to ask. Lorna, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It was just to ask, in addition, were members minded to not expend further monies on the maintenance of the land at the moment, bearing in mind we have had a recent complaint from a resident, or would you prefer to wait until these matters have been looked at in further detail in respect of a site visit?
I think we should wait until they looked into further detail, to be quite honest with you, because equally, I don't want to make it so unattractive that people don't want to take over the land at all. You see what I mean? You know, but we got to reach some form of solution here, haven't we? Even if it means we play some brickmanship about surrendering of the land. You know.
That's fine. Thank you.
That's okay. Fine. So we're happy with those recommendations.
Yes.
Okay. Great. All right. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Field's an update report, number 6. Lorna, do you want to lead on that?
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the part 1 report, and it relates to some additional detail contained with part 2 of the agenda. The report is intended really as just an introduction to the Part 2 report, which provides an update to committee on the outcome of the resolution to obtain an agricultural land classification survey for Glebe Fields and seek instructions from the Trust in terms of an appropriate way forward. The January 21 meeting resolved, amongst other things, that a further update report be brought to committee for consideration when the results of an agricultural land classification survey were available. The survey that was required is quite a specialist field of expertise, and the consultation with planning colleagues determined that a good way forward was to speak to Welsh Government. Officials at Welsh Government were contacted, and they offered to check the predictive map data that they hold on their systems for the site. The results of the consultation with Welsh Government are discussed in Part 2 of the agenda. So that's probably all I really need to say on this report, if that's okay.
I think given what you've said, I think if we go into any detail, we're going to go into Part 2. So I'm going to move to the next item. Is that okay for everyone? And we'll have the fuller discussion at the Part 2. Yeah. So thank you for that. We now move on to...
Sorry, Councillor, can I just have a sort of formal moving of the recommendation in the report? Just so
we need the recommendations on that.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Not doing that. Okay, we're now the land at Cassie Hill, Calliston, number 7.
Thank you, Chairman. So Cassie Hill, again, similar to the previous item, this is an introductory report in respect of a further detailed report in Part 2 of the agenda. The report's intended to update committee following receipt of a qualified surveyor's report required in accordance with Section 119 of the Charities Act relating to land at Cassie Hill. The Trust owns a very small parcel of land at Cassie Hill, measuring approximately 33 square metres. The location shown on the land, excuse me, my voice is going, the land on the plan at Appendix A. A member of the public expressed an interest in purchasing the land or having it under licence to maintain it. The applicant wished to tidy up the land and generally keep the land in good condition. In consultation with the chairman, a qualified surveyor's report was sought, and the detail relating to the qualified surveyor's report is outlined in the Part 2 report on the agenda.
Okay, for the same reasons, are you happy to move the recommendations? Okay, and then we discuss this in detail in Part 2. Yeah, fine. Okay, now the next item on the agenda, I'm going to withdraw myself from the meeting. Catherine, if you can invite me back, that would be good when you finish that.
I'll do a request to join invite, so keep an eye on Teams.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. So we will now hand over to the Vice Chair.
Right, who's going to give an update on this to members? Right, Lorna, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Vice Chairman. Again, very similar to the other reports, this report's intended as an introductory report for the detailed report on Part 2 of the agenda. It's intended to update committee following receipt of the qualified surveyor's report required in accordance with the Charities Act as referenced earlier in relation to the land at Myrtle Close this time. The land that the Trust own, committee will be aware, it's off or near Cogan Hall Farm off Myrtle Close and measures approximately 4.7 acres. And again, the location of that land can be seen on the plan at Appendix A. Committee were advised previously of an email approach which inquired whether the Trust had an intention to market or dispose of its land. And officers' recommendations were that if the Trust were minded to consider the disposal of the site, a report should be procured from a qualified surveyor, which would provide recommendations on disposal options prior to any decision being made on the land's future. And again, the report and recommendations of the qualified surveyor's report has been received, and the details are reported under Part 2 of the agenda.
Right, thank you very much for that. Obviously, like the other items, we need to take all this information into Part 2. I don't know whether Mark wants to come back to move into Part 2. Does everybody agree that we take all the information into Part 2?
So happy to move the recommendations on agenda item 8. Just for sake of ease, would someone be willing to move part 2 now, and then we can stop the recording?
I'll move part 2.
Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Wonderful. Thank you. So for the benefit of the recording, I'll now stop recording and we'll move into part 2.